Okay, well, hello kiddos. I don't always do covers, but when I do, it's big. It's big. Dun, dun, dun. I'll go slow, sort of. Still going. Going. Ta-da! Okay, so it is kind of a wraparound, so 2 11 by 17, and almost everyone is in it. There we go. The reveal of the inks. Justice League Unlimited, and I wish I could take credit for how grand this is, but it is Mr. Ed Bennis. So, and a DCU. So here it is, guys. And want to talk about it? Let's talk about it just a little bit. Just a little bit. Do you guys see any of your favorites in here? Any of your favorites? Okay, so something this big, I think, I don't know, how are the other artists scanning like oversized art? Because this is 2 11 by 17 taped together, so we scan it half at a time and then put it together for the file that we send to DC, and you have to do all the little fixing at the seam to make it seamless. So where's my chair? Okay, so yeah, let's go over it. I'll do half at a time. So let's talk about a couple little things. This is I guess kind of like a fun piece to talk about. I did a little post on what to do, how to address like the little gray area, like the little side shading or the soft shading of the pencils, where things are kind of fading in and out of, like, you know, black and white, your gray areas, your soft gray and your darker gray, and how you can approach that, and endless amount of techniques, I'm sure. I think Zip-A-Tone would be great here, but I don't use Zip-A-Tone. I never have, no reason. I just never really have, and I'm cheap, so I'm not buying Zip-A-Tone when I can just, you know, get cheap sponges and stamp. So what I did here, I had a little video with different ways that you can, you know, just some basic techniques that you can apply for this. But for the final, or the original, for this one, I did like a sponge, which you can use different textures, and I did just to kind of mix it up, so you have a lot of like different textures and like finer, softer look going into like when it's more concentrated, going and I'm dipping with both, I'm sponging with both ink and the white, just going into, you know, bleeding one into the other, and fading it off to gradually like black, fancy galaxy stuff. Dun dun dun. Where it's me again, where we go into like, you know, black with stars, and on this side this is more of like a, the effect is a little different. So this is more like a little galaxy spacey kind of thing, whereas this is like maybe like smoke or debris, or just, you know, like fading off. Still same technique with the sponging. I go first, I really I actually sponged this whole thing to where, like, if you see the original, it's mostly gray. It's not like a solid black ink. It's mostly gray. And this is why you need to look at originals, guys. Like the printed version, you won't see any of this stuff. And I think that there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do. Like, I can leave it all for the colorist. I think originally Ed had intended for all of this to be left to Mr. Alex Sinclair, colorist extraordinaire, for Alex to just handle this whole thing. And he, I mean, he can do an amazing job. But I had asked to, if I could go ahead and have a little fun with the, you know, with it in the ink version. So, and really, if they want to, if Alex wanted to, he can just leave out like my background, and he can just take the scan from the pencils and do his own thing. So, you know, they can still do that. But I wanted to do this for the original art because this is going to be sold, and I wanted the original to kind of match what is going to be printed, or to have this, you know, this effect, full effects in ink as well. So I really did this for original art reason. So a lot of this is gray tone. So with the issue would be like scanning, because when you scan gray, not that I know anything about it, I had help, and I consulted Alex as well. So I sent scans to DC with bitmap and gray tone, and again I had help with the scanning. And what Alex did was just to keep all this, because once you, if this is like scanning bitmap, it looks nothing like this. It just goes to like really blotchy black, and it looks absolutely horrible. So it looks much better scan gray tone, and where you can still kind of like get to keep all the subtle gray and glowing of all the different shades here. So this is where it's trickiest, and I felt that it was worth doing, at least for the cover. And it's such a, like, I think it's such an awesome piece for original art to have like the complete full effect. So that's really why I did that. And I asked Ed first to make sure it was okay with him, and he was cool with it. So I had the thumbs up, so I went for it. And we went here from like fading into more of like, yeah, galaxy, universe, space, outer space thing, with like maybe like, light streaks and cool space light stuff going through. And it's basically the same technique. Sponged it all the way through, kept the lines. Kept the lines for the flag by masking, and I'll have a little video on how I did the masking for that. Masked off these white lines first, and then took off the tape, and then continued to blend it in, so they all kind of eventually just kind of blend in together. And you can still see like the stripes, but at different gray, black, white levels. So, and again, there's a lot of like, started with the ink and softly worked outwards. Same here. This is obviously no lines here, so it's just more like a glowing all around. So soft sponging around here, and I went back in with a reverse sponging with a white, and did kind of like the same thing, so sponging some white into black here so it kind of flows. So there's like a direction or a flow, and this is more of like an overall glow. I don't know if you can see, overall glow, and to kind of mix in with more chunky stuff, I went in with toothbrush and just flicking chunky inks and chunky whites with like the brush, inking brush off the credit card plastic thing. So all the little different stuff just to kind of like make it more of like a smooth transition, and also like so not so uniform. Okay, so there's that. And what else can we talk about? Oh, because it's such a large group, something to think about in inking such a big group with, let's see, so many characters, so many like different size of characters. What I like doing is, especially with it was softer lead, softer pencils. So what I like to do is I do go in and do all the faces first. Sometimes the faces aren't, and it's the small faces are tricky, where you know, you can mess up even a tiny face. That's where you mess up, because you have very, very little room to play with. So make sure you're very clear about interpreting those faces, because it takes absolutely nothing at all for your characters to look like all weird. And so I do, and some of the faces, in, you know, understandable, it's hard to like pencil, or you have pencilers with really, really fine pencils, they can do the little faces, but it's also hard to ink really, really tiny. So that's kind of tricky, and my eyes aren't what they used to be, so it's a little bit tougher. I tried to get those right first, so I'll go in, especially with, it's gonna be like a whole lot of moving around, spinning the page, so the pencils will fade as you go. So I like to get the faces right first, and make sure I get all those in, and I go in and kind of like scanning all their uniforms, or their, you know, all their outfits, and make sure everything's there and is kind of right, and define what I'm unsure about, ask questions, ask the editors, ask the pencilers if you're unsure. And so to kind of scale, and also I've talked about scaling before. You have the larger figures out front, the superstars out front, and so their lines are going to be, and you don't have to do like, you know, this is where you can kind of play around with it a little bit in terms of style. You can go solid, chunky all around for contour lines, or you can play around with like a little thicker, thinner, you know, like a line variation for each figure. But as long as you scale it down accordingly as you move back, and you can still use, you know, you don't have to just go flat lines on the characters that are a little bit farther away. In the background, you can go lighter, and you can still do subtle like thick and thin too, to where like maybe the thin fades out. You have a nice background to kind of frame them, so that helps you a little bit in terms of like staging your, you know, the characters that might get lost. So I think, you know, that's important, is to make sure that there's some line variation, or you have a lot of rooms, because there's a lot of character to go from, like, say, someone this small to someone this big, and the amount of details on them, you can also like scale up and down the amount of the details and the renderings on them. That also, you adjust that as well. to help enhance, like, the distance, the depth, and the dimensions of it all. So it looks like there is a crowd, and it's not just like flat. It's not so flat. So you try to give it some kind of dimension and depth, and it makes it a lot more fun to look at too. Like, everything isn't going to get lost, or everyone, you're going to lose people, you're going to lose characters. You want to use the line, or even some of like the pencilers will usually spot blacks, but if there's some way that you can kind of help that out and aid in a way that you're not blending one character into another, there is a way to kind of frame them, and that is something to definitely keep in mind. I'm going to keep moving back and forth. So it is a large piece, but the background is fairly simple, in the sense that it's just a, like one simple background. So it's not going to be too busy, which is a great thing, because you have like smaller, finer stuff, and you have like, fun background, but it isn't competing with like all these characters. Otherwise, I think it would be too overwhelming. So I think Ed made a great call. So I don't know what was in the script, or what, the writer or the editors were asking for. I think he did a great job. And yeah, I think it's a great design. So you have a nice framing of it all. Everything wraps back around, so you keep going back, and you can keep looking back, circling back as many times as you need to see everyone. But let me see, what else can we talk about? Lots of characters, lots of little subtle details, and he didn't leave out like a little. He still added a little bit of background there too at the edges and the bottom. So so it doesn't just disappear into nowhere. So even these little guys have some background behind them. Yeah, so I had a couple other smaller videos where I did cover different areas that I inked, like, yeah, there we go. My squinting. I think I did a little thing on that guy, little thing on this guy, and what else? I think once I got to the second half, I was recording less, because I was just trying to get just focus on getting this done and not so much pause. Oh, here's another thing to talk about. So there'll be like details on top of details, and this is where you can't be too afraid to cover up something that you've already done, because it should work in layers. And you're like, he has really see Aquaman, smaller, finer rendering details, like a lot of really light line work in there, and it was really fine in the pencils. So I tried to keep it equally fine, but there's going to be his, like the scaling on top of all that detail, which, it's kind of like, oh no, all this work is going to get covered, but you need to do it to where it works together in layers, and it's not going to be so covered, but it actually works very well together. So don't be afraid to do one effect over another to get more like depth or dimension to it. It gives it a much more interesting look. So you're not going to lose anything by, just if you make them work together. So that's something to keep in mind. What else can we talk about? Other than that, I mean, it's just a little video for the reveal of this cover. It is a very cool cover. I was happy to do it. I don't get to ink covers very much, so I really appreciate Mr. Bennis requesting me on this, and it was a pleasure and an honor, because we haven't worked together since Justice League with Brad Meltzer. So thanks Ed, thanks DC for letting me do this, and I don't know when I'll do this again. This might be the last one we do together, so it was a pleasure. let me know if you guys have any questions, if you want to talk about anything else on here. One more last little look. Dun, dun, dun. Ta-da! Okay, thanks guys. I have a few more pieces to do. I think I have a few commissions, and some of the commissioners, the owners of the commissions have requested for posts as I work on them, and maybe I'll do that, and it's kind of fun to do. So thanks for coming by. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll do more of these. Let me know if you have any questions, or if there's some stuff that you want me to discuss. And oh yes, I was gonna ask. It is mostly, I did some demonstrations with quill and nib, but it's mostly, I would say 90% brush, and not including the sponging stuff in the background. It's 90% brush, just because a lot of the small stuff, like I said, the other thing to be careful about with the small figures and the faces is that once, it depends on the quality of paper, and if there's been erasing on that, it can disturb the surface of the paper, to where if you try to go in with, I think like not tech, yeah, I guess tech pens or microns will be fine. Like if you have a really awesome, like sharp, fresh micron, that would be fine. But if you try to ink some of these faces with a nib, sometimes that will really like shred up the surface, and it will mess up the features or the faces, especially when it's so fine you don't have a whole lot of room to play with, and it will you know, it'll bleed, it'll blur, and just trying to fix that on a really tiny face can get really messy. I try to keep the original as clean as possible, so you try to not work it so much. Just, you know, and it's fine to have like areas where you're going to correct or touch up a little bit. It's going to happen. You're going to, you know, you're going to do that. And I think that's part of like the charm of having originals. So I did ink a lot of these small figures, and I can tell like if there's been erasing. So I want to be careful. And for me, using brush has been the best way to handle like surfaces that I'm not sure about, like if I really want to make sure that, you know, it's not going to bleed, or I want to make sure that, you know, the line stays sharp and clean. I usually go into it with a brush which is really gentle on the surface of the paper, and it gives me what I need, which, you know, you can do like a lot of sharp fine stuff with brushes. And you know, you go right into the big chunky stuff with your brush. So for me, just the transition is easy. It's, you know, it's quick. I don't have to worry about like you know, the change in line weight and switching tools and all that. Not that that's a big deal, but that is one of the reasons why I also like using brush. I mean, you can handle a lot of different lines with it, and you can handle a lot of different paper surface with it. And especially if you like filling out black, sometimes you just want to see if something works, if the lines work, if the weights, or you know, all that works. And sometimes you can't see it until the blacks are filled. So I kind of fill it in as I go, and having a brush handy for that is perfect. Yeah, so it's you know, fairly simple. I don't really have any like fancy instruments or anything that I use. It's just my usual. Again, this is just an excuse to reveal a cover, which I rarely get to do. So thank you. Thank you, Ed. So there you go. And thank you, Brazil, for all the love. I think I acquired some Brazilian fans because I worked with Ed, and you guys have been so loyal and wonderful. I appreciate you chiming in, and I am, let's see, I am grateful for every single one of you. So thanks for watching, and let's see if we can do some more fun, silly stuff. You can always count on me for silly and fun stuff. So thanks again for coming by, and we'll see you next time.